Israel is reportedly preparing for a major wave of immigration post-coronavirus. Many Jews have struggled with being unable to visit their homeland during the global pandemic and have decided to make Israel their permanent home. Israel's Minister of Aliyah, Pnina Tamano-Shata, briefed the Knesset, telling lawmakers that Israel is expecting an influx of 90,000 immigrants by the end of the year 2021. This compares to 35,463 new Olim last year. There's been a 400% increase in Aliyah requests from North America and 3 times the number of immigration inquiries from France. Keren Hayesod is ready to welcome these new Israelis home and is prepared to assist them with their absorption into their new life in Israel.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Sam Grunberg. He's the world chairman of Keren Hayesod. Sam, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
So Sam, this is the 100-year anniversary of Keren Hayesod. How was Keren Hayesod even in existence 100 years ago?
Well, we were established in 1920 as part of the national institutions of Israel. There are 4 national institutions that predate the state of Israel as part of the modern Zionist dream, of course, of fulfilling biblical prophecy. And we already started working to garner support from communities and friends of Israel from all around the world to help build the state that was on the way.
Keren Hayesod means the foundation fund, and you've definitely built all the foundations of Israel, El Al, Zim, the shipping magnet, the cities across the community. What was some of the big advances that you've seen over the years when it comes to Keren Hayesod?
Well, as you mentioned, Keren Hayesod in the early days, it was all about, as you said, the foundation fund, about pooling together and raising the resources that were necessary to fulfill this modern-day Zionistic dream of the state of Israel. So in the early days, it was everything from buying land and getting the land ready and putting together the national institutions. It was real state building. And then over time, as the needs changed, our support was for anything that was on the top of the national priorities of the state of Israel. Because Keren Hayesod, as the foundation fund, we have a seat at the table of official Israel, and whatever the national priorities are, that's what we support. So today it's mostly Aliyah, bringing new immigrants to Israel, which over the years, and we're very proud to say that in our decades and decades of existence, we've helped bring over 3.5 million new immigrants to Israel over the years.
We're now in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and you have a huge task ahead of you. Apparently, Aliyah requests are through the roof. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I actually just this morning was meeting with my friends and colleagues at the Jewish Agency for Israel. They're our strategic partners. We work together in raising the funds necessary, and they work together with the government of Israel, all of us, in actually bringing the new immigrants. And as you mentioned, as a result of the coronavirus crisis and the way that it was handled in Israel, and also unfortunately because of some of the effects that we've seen around the world in Israel, we've seen the anti-Semitism rear its ugly head, all kinds of conspiracy theories in different parts of the world about the Jews and just terrible hatred that we've seen. So all of that put together has caused a peak in interest in Aliyah, in new immigration. Anything from, we saw headlines talking about a wave of 100,000 new immigrants. And just to put that into perspective, the average for the last several years is anywhere between 30 to 35,000 new immigrants to Israel per year from all around the world. So 100,000 is very significant. But even if it's less than 100,000, the expectation and the anticipation is that there will be a big wave of Aliyah. So together with the government of Israel, ourselves, we're gearing up for that, and it's going to require a lot of resources.
Well, you're also reaching out to Christian communities around the world. Why do you think Christians would want to be involved in helping people make immigration, Jews come back to the land of Israel? Well,
first of all, I think we've seen this over the last decades, our Christian friends and supporters understanding that our shared Judeo-Christian values have come together in helping to see the fulfillment of biblical prophecy in modern state of Israel, in returning to having the Jews return to their ancestral homeland after a couple thousand years. And our beliefs dovetail here, and it's been just terrific to see that friendship and support. And it's very interesting, you mentioned our 100 years. We actually, one of the very first representatives of Keren Hayesod, going back to our early days, who would go around the world and help raise money, was actually one of the first of the modern Christian Zionists, John Henry Patterson, who came from England and then fought here against, fought here to help protect the Jews. And he would actually go, and he was one of our Keren Hayesod representatives. So from our history, the support and friendship with our Christian Zionist friends goes back a long way, and it's very important.
We're seeing a lot of Christian support for Aliyah from Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Jews are coming home in record numbers. Just this last few months during the coronavirus pandemic, we've seen hundreds of Ethiopians come home. What do you expect is going to happen with Ethiopian Aliyah?
So first of all, it's been really heartwarming to see, and for me and for my organization that I have the privilege to be the chairman of, to see that even during this crisis that Aliyah continues. And especially from places like Ethiopia. Just to give you an idea, I believe in the month of March alone, we brought together with our friends at the Jewish Agency and the State of Israel, brought over 1,000 new Olim, and it's continued in the months since then as well. Ethiopia, as you know, it's been very challenging in the last few years. There are still a few thousand Jews there that are waiting to come. Now, hopefully that there's a new government here in Israel, we'll be able to get that going and to bring them as quickly as possible. There was a government decision last year to bring 1,000. I think we ended up bringing less than 1,000. A lot of it had to do with the politics here and the fact that we had an interim or outgoing government. So we expect now, and we're going to demand, to bring those new immigrants. And interestingly, the new Minister of Aliyah and Absorption, her name is Penina. She's originally from Ethiopia. She came on Aliyah when she was 3 years old. So I believe she's 30 plus. And I'm proud to say that Keren Hayesod and Keren Hayesod support, together with support from our Christian friends around the world, helped to bring her and her family members all of those years ago. And now, to fast forward to where we are today, a new Israeli government, a new Minister of Aliyah and Absorption, who was born in Ethiopia, came here on Aliyah, and now, hopefully, with her at the head of that ministry, will help us push forward to bring as many of those Ethiopian Jews on Aliyah as we can this year.
And we're seeing, as you mentioned, a rise in anti-Semitism around the world. It's being bolstered by this anti-Semitic blood libel that we're hearing with the coronavirus pandemic. But we're expecting to see a lot more Aliyah from Europe this year. What kind of challenges are there in bringing Jews home from Europe?
You know, our organization, we work very closely with the communities in Europe. And besides the anti-Semitism that you mentioned, they, of course, also were hit the hardest in terms of the coronavirus crisis. We're in touch with communities in places like in Italy, France, Spain, Germany. And those communities are really in crisis. They're really in crisis. And I think the fact that they've seen how well Israel has managed through this crisis up until this point, that together with the economic situation there and the anti-Semitism, so all of those are contributing factors for the rise in the increase to come on Aliyah. It's the same challenges really, it's resources, and that's why we do the work that we do, Keren Hayesod, and that's why the support and friendship from our friends around the world, and especially our Christian friends of the world, is so crucial.
Sam, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
My message is, first of all, a message of gratitude. Myself, being here in Israel, the chairman of a national institution representing Jewish communities all around the world, more than 60 communities in 45 countries, we're so grateful for the partnership, the solidarity with our Christian Zionist brothers and sisters around the world. Your support is critical. Your moral support, your financial support, your political, diplomatic support. When you're able to come visit, pray for Israel, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and there should be blessings for all of you and blessings for Israel.
Thank you, Sam, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.